Thank you very much. It was delicious. I was going to thank you. Yeah. I'll watch it and I'll give it back.
I'm glad you liked it though.
Okay, cool. Okay, welcome back, everyone. How was lunch? Good. I wanted to thank Stephanie because she did a flan like for my birthday, and it was delicious. So thank you very much. Okay, so let's keep going on the CSS. The last thing that we're going to see is something called the box model. And then after that, we can get started in the lab. So, okay, let's look at what this is. So it turns out that on all the HTML that we write and on all our websites, we could think of the elements that we have in the page as boxes. And those boxes have properties like margin, border, padding, and we're going to get to see some of those now. So I'm still having the same file that we had before, the to-dos HTML. It has, we have linked a CSS through the link tag. Let's go to the browser and let's see what we have here. Here. So we have this. So now I said we can think of all the elements as if they were just boxes put in the page. Let's look at what I mean by that. So right-click anywhere and click Inspect. Here, what you will see is on the right side under Styles, where we were inspecting all our CSS properties. If you scroll down, you get this little box in here, and this is what we call the box model for HTML elements. So here I have selected the HTML, so that means this box model is for the entire HTML. You can see that you can hover over stuff in here, and what we get is the innermost square is what we call the content. After that, this other square we call the padding. We're going to get to see how the padding is different from the margin, for instance. And then outside of the padding, we get the border. This is if we specify a border for our, let's say our button, this will be where that is. And then after that, we have the margin outside. And the margin will be extra space that we want our elements to have on, around the entire element. Because you could do margin at the top, left, right, or bottom. So let's look at that's the HTML, but let's look at something more interesting. Like look at this H1. So I click on that H1, and remember here scroll down in the Styles tab to get the box model. and then this is the box that represents the H tag. We can see that when I hover over the margin, is that color, I don't know, like orangey color, and it says it has a margin at the top of 21.44 pixels at the top, and a margin at the bottom of the same height. We can also see that it doesn't have margins on the sides, right? So look at also how, let me just remove that red from here so that we get to see a little bit more contrasting. Here again, if I hover over the content box, I only get the content of the H1 tag, which is only this text, right? Note also, this is what we said a few days back, which is an H tag is a block element. It takes in the entire width of the page. Also, now in CSS, you can verify what I was saying about the block element. If you go in and see the H1 default style sheet, you can see that it says display block. Right? That block, this property block, is the one that makes it take the entire width of the page. But right now we're exploring the box model that we have in web elements or page HTML elements. So that's the content, padding, border, margin. So we can see that as I hover over border and padding, we don't see anything highlighted, right? And we also see that around the border box, we don't have like any numbers. That is, we don't have a border on this element. So let's add a border to the H1. Let's see. So let me uncomment this code. I'm not gonna route the body. H1. So let's remove this property, and I want to give the H1 a border. So for that, we just call border. Note here also that there are many different border-related properties. There's border block color, and there's some that I don't even know. Border bottom, border collapse. There's one shorthand, which is border. Also, just like in HTML, just like in JavaScript, this is all, I'm not making this up, like this is all in the documentation. So if we go to, let's do like border CSS property. We get the exact same two sources, which is W3 schools, as well as MDN. Let's look at this one. This one seems to explain it a little bit better. A CSS border property allows you to specify the style, width, and color of an element's border. I have borders on all sides. I have a red bottom border. I have brown borders. I have a blue left border. And then it goes to explain even more border-related properties like border style. You can have the border to be dotted, dash, solid, double, groove. There's a lot of stuff for you to experiment with. Border style. Look at those tiles. Look at what they look like. This is dotted. This is dash, solid, double, groove, inset order, a bunch of them. So let's look at here. I'm saying border. Also note here that it says the border property allows you to specify not only the style but also the width and the color. If you go to the more technical documentation of MDN, oh, where did I go? I think the MDN is a little bit more clear on also like the syntax or all the options that we have. So here, the border shorthand CSS property sets an element border. It sets the value for border width, border style, and border color. So we're gonna see what that means. In here, it shows us the syntax. So I could say border style to be solid, but I could also say border, then the width, and then the style that I want. or using the 3-in-1, which is border with the width first, which is medium, style second, which is dash, color third, which is green. So let's look at some of this in our, let's put some of this in our H1. So let's do, first goes the width. I'm gonna say 2 pixels. Second goes the style, and the solid, and then the color. Let's do pink. Now you save that. Let's go back to the browser, and you should see this. Now your border, now your H1 has a border that is 2 pixels thick, that is solid, and that is pink. Look at what happens if I do like dot. Now there are dots, and there are some others. So now that we have this, let's leave it solid. I'll refresh the page. Now let's inspect the box model. As we go down here, now we see, do you remember that before we had border, everything was empty, or it was just dashes like the padding, just like padding is? So border is, I guess, because the border is already sort of yellowish or pink, it's sort of hard to notice the difference. But here I'm hovering over the border, and it says is 2 pixels at the top, 2 pixels on the left, 2 pixels on the right, and 2 pixels at the bottom. So that's the border. But even before the border, we have something called padding. The padding is additional space that you can have between the content of the element and its border. That's so that you can control like how close is the border to the content, basically, or the text in this case. So let's add some padding. Actually, I'm gonna do it here, sort of live. As we go here, we see the H1 tag, and here I want to add another declaration to this H1 tag. So I want to do it in here in the browser to experiment. I don't need to like save it to a file. So I just need to click like right here, and then my cursor allows me to type in here another property that I want to experiment with, and that property is called padding. Now padding, similar to the border, is a shorthand for, we can say padding at the top if we only want padding at the top. We can say padding left or padding right. But if we want all around padding, what we can just do is just padding, and let's do 10 pixels. And that's what we get. So look at the difference between having padding 10 pixels and having the default padding that H1s will have. So the padding is that space that is in between the content. This is the content, right? This space all around the element that is between the content and the border. Right? And if we go back to our box model at the bottom, we see that now our padding now we have 10 pixels of padding all around. In here we have now 10, that's that green highlighting. Then we have our border, that is 2 pixels all around, and then we have a margin. By default, all H tags will have a margin top and margin bottom. We could even verify that if we look at here. This is the default style sheet by the browser, and we can see margin block start. This is that measurement, 0.62 EM, and block end 0.67 EM as well. And this is another measurement, right? EM, just like pixels or inches. This is a relative measurement, but we know that will, if we convert this 0.67 to pixels, we will get 21.44 pixels. And here the box model always shows the measurements in pixels, which is really handy. So, okay, so I said that the margin is that other extra space that we have outside of the border of the element. Let's do some of this styling for that. Margin, I want it to be, let's say, 20 pixels all around. Now, again, note the difference. We are adding margin on the, we are making all around the margin to be 20 pixels all around. Let's scroll down here. Now we overrode the defaults. If we go in here, if we go in here, now this margin block start and margin block end, they're still applying. Otherwise, we will see the cross line through, but we are not getting that because this margin block start is not the margin that we're overriding here, which is just margin. This is another kind of margin that we have. But here, if we look at here, we see that we have 20 pixels all around. So, and note that also the padding and the border are transparent. We cannot color those. Those are transparent. In fact, if I color, let's color the body. I selected the body here. I'm going to say background, here. Background color. Let's do light blue. You can see that even the content is also transparent. You see that we see behind the H1 is the body, right? And we're still able to see through the H1. So in here, let's go back to the H1, and we end up with this. This will allow us to control the dimensions, how close we want the border to the content, and how much space we want around the content. That will be the padding. What kind of border do we want? Do we want it to be rounded corners? I'll let you to explore those on yourself. Like how can you get the corners round, and the margin will be overall space that is outside of the element that we want to preserve for basically just visual preference. So questions regarding the box model. This is really handy. Like before, we didn't have this, that we were able to highlight the different parts of the box model. Questions? Why would this be useful, or what for? What do you think, Owen?
Just like CSS in general, or just that?
Like just being able to control this box model properties. No, I think the H1 will still be at the top. So I cannot change with the box model property, which are margin, border, and padding, and the content. I cannot really control. Oh, I see. I was gonna say I cannot really control where the element is, but I will be lying to you because, well, I could specify. Let's say I want 100 pixels of border at the top. Then now my H1. Let's see if I can move this here. Now I get this. I guess you can control to a certain extent where the element will appear if you add margin. Yeah. If you want your page to start a little bit lower in the page, you could just add margin top. Any other suggestions as to why this would be helpful? You mean like, I don't think I know what you mean. You said like pictures. A picture will be a good one because let's say you're building a website and you have a gallery, right? And you want all the photos to look like with the rounded corners, and also maybe look like they are behind a glass. Well, that wouldn't be with this, but with this you could get the round corners, for instance. Let's see what else am I missing here. Oh, also, so yeah, this box here, left, right, top, and bottom, and you have so the total size or the total width of this element will be the sum of all the widths, which in this case will be, so the width will be 205 pixels. Right? So this is the content of this box is 205 pixels, and the height is 37 pixels. Right? But the entire space that everything takes up to, you will need to add 205 plus 10 pixels on each side. That'll be 215, 225. And then 2 pixels on each other side. So we said 225, 227, and 29. 229, right? And then 20 more on each side. That'll be 249, and then another 20, 69. So our entire element occupies 249 pixels. And even if we do, let's look at this. Oh, is it? Oh, because I can't use it. I wanted to measure it. For some reason, it's not letting me do that. But yeah, if we add all the width, we're going to get the total size of our element, the total width of our element, and same if we do our height. We could also calculate the height of the element if we add the content height, the padding height, and the border at the top. Or yeah, we wouldn't call this the padding height. This would be the padding top. So if we add the padding top and the padding bottom, we add that to the content width and repeat the step for the border top and border bottom. We'll end up with the total sum of our element. Questions or comments? Yes, there is. Oh, to do this one, I double click here and then I can change it live. Also, what this will do is all styles, once I refresh the page, will be lost. Right? This is just a playground for you to experiment. Also, once I do this here, let's put 100 again. You will see that at the top here, you get the actual CSS. It gets put in element.style, and then the regular curly brackets, the property, and the 100 pixels. Note here that we are saying margin dash top. So we can control what margin do we want and what size. if we say margin dash left or margin dash right, for instance. Margin, if we just say margin, it will take out the entire all around the element. Other questions? So the box model is important because once we have elements that are next to each other, we're going to get to see, for instance, that margins in paragraphs, by default, all the paragraphs will have a margin top and a margin bottom. And when they are together, when I have a paragraph and another paragraph behind, underneath, the margins that are touching each other will combine. And we end up with the same margin. So this is one of the reasons why you want to be aware of the box model that we get here. And these are the properties that constitute the box model: the margin, the border, the padding, etc. This content, we cannot directly control the width or height of the content. The content box will be as big as it needs to be to fit the entire content. We could sort of give the illusion that we're changing the content box if we have the border really close. Basically, if we don't have any border and if we don't have any padding, we could give the illusion that we're making the box bigger. But even though, let's try that. Let's see. Let's go here. I'm going to remove the border, padding. No, I actually want to. Let's do border 0 pixels. No, but I still want to see the border. So in this case, I was trying to see if we could make the content bigger somehow, but without having to add actually more content, because again, the content will be as big as it needs to be to fit the entire content. Let's see, I think there is this one. Let's do width. So this is another CSS property, width and height. And I want to do, actually width is already the entire width of the page, so I'm going to try height. Let's do 600 pixels. And we end up with 600 pixels apparent of content. But let's see if that's actually the content. Oh. So I was wrong. It turns out we can change the width of the content by just saying in the CSS, or the width or the height by just saying width or height, whatever value we want. And in this way, we ended up making the content box 600 pixels tall. So also, if you catch me saying live, please call me out. Cool. So in this way, we can make the content box as big as we want. And yeah, in this case, I don't find myself doing this a lot, controlling the width or the height randomly. We want all the elements to fit all the content that we want instead. Let's see what else we have here. Right, so the content of the element where the images or text appear, the size of the content area defaults to the amount, size, or size of the content unless you specify height and width of the element. Height and width refer to the content area, not to the box as a whole. So this is where I was wrong. The height and width properties allow me to specify how the content box size. So actually, let's look at this. Go back here. Let's reduce the height. Let's make it maybe 300 pixels. Right, so that's even 200. And also let's control the width, because the H1 is a block element. It will occupy the entire width of the page, but once we specify it, then we're forcing it to be this width. Let's say 50 pixels. We end up with that. We are forcing the H1 to be the content box of the H1 to be 50 pixels wide. Oh, and note this. Let's see, do I have the H1 selected? Yes. So this is the content box. Then we have padding 0, border 1 pixel, and then margin 20 pixels. This is interesting because you see that the H1 is still occupying the entire width. And it seems to be that the margin on the right side was sort of expanded to still occupy the entire width. So we didn't really, the box as a whole, we didn't control its width. The box as a whole is still the entire width of the page. We only control the content box. This is important to remember because you may be thinking, oh, I'm going to make this one smaller so that something else fits in this area. Well, that wouldn't happen because this area is actually being occupied by that border that the browser expanded to still occupy the entire width. Let's see what else am I saying here. Okay, so let's look at this example. I'm just going to copy this code. This is just a more complex web page that has H1, has some lists, it has some links, it has even some images. So let's try it with this one. Here I'm going to maybe create another file. Let's call this one test.html. Paste this here. Also, this is missing the body, and it's also missing the HTML. So I'm just going to add those. Oh, it's also missing a head, doc type, HTML. And I'm going to add the head just from the other one. Oh, and also the body. This is another nice feature of VS Code. I don't have proper indentation. In here, what you can do is you can right-click and then format document. This will fix your indentation for you. It helps you keep better consistency when you're coding. You could even customize it to whatever you want. If you want, in this case, for instance, adding spaces between elements, which is nice. And then it indented everything properly. Okay, so we don't have a JS file in here, so I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm going to create a test CSS where we're going to get to do some CSS. So let's inspect this code. Here we have the body has a div, and the div has an h1 and has 2 p tags. Then after that, there is another div. Let's make a list. It has an h2 and it has a list ul with elis inside. That list seems to have an ol nested inside with 2 li elements. We have another div with an h2 of links, and it seems to have one link that says take me to Google. Then another div with images, and there's an image, and then we have another div with a table. This one is one that we haven't seen, just another HTML tag, the table tag. And then table tags have table rows, that's the TR. So the first row of the table, we want it to be the columns, and we have those as TH for table header. We specify column 1, and after that we just have table rows. And the table rows will have table data, TD. So at the end we have a form with a bunch of inputs. Let's look at what this looks like in the browser. Reviewing Finder, test. And this is what we have. This web page is my first page. It has the list. It has a link that will take you to Google. Oops. Oh. No, where did my page go? It has an image that is broken. It has a table. Look at the table, what it looks like. These are the table. This is now all a TR, table row. And these are table TH, table head, that by default will be bold. And then we have the rows and the cells. Lastly, we have a form that have first name and last name with some checkboxes. No, this one's are radio buttons. This is not well made because if I click the label, it should select that. That's bad user experience. And some checkboxes as well. That if I check the label, should check as well. So let's look at this. Also, why do we have divs here? What do you think? We have some divs that are separating the form. You can see that the form is wrapped in a div, that div that starts here and ends here. The table is also wrapped in a div, the images, etc. You can see that here. If we open the inspector tools, we see the first div is that section, second is that one, the third one is the links, the other one is the images, and so on and so forth. So divs are just divisions that you want to make for grouping content together. For instance, in this case, like we want the links to be in this div. So if we have more links, we'll probably add them inside this div. But any questions here as to the code of this website? This again I took from the lesson, which is this. So now the purpose of this is so that we can see what happens if we use this CSS. So I don't have, you can see that I don't have this test CSS file that's created. And here, I'm going to paste my CSS. It seems that to all the divs will get this styling. All the divs width will be 350 pixels wide. They all will have a margin of 10. They all will have a border that is 5 pixels all around, solid and gray. And they all will have a padding that is 10 pixels all around, as well as the margin. Now let's look at what we have in the browser. Let's refresh this page, and we get a more, I will say it looks a little bit more organized. At least it shows me like the different sections. So the width, all the divs will still be occupying the entire width, but we're just making the content box 350 pixels wide. Questions, comments, concerns, feelings, anything? Yes, Douglas? You could do Command S, which is what I do. Also, I have this thing here that is so that you can see what keyboard shortcuts I'm using. Here, this stands for the command, and then the S. Yeah. Yes, Joey.
I've seen span used. Can you use that?
Yeah. So the span tag is for as when you want to target something like a word specifically, and you don't know, the span is a very flexible and universal tag that basically allows you to, is mostly used when you want to apply, let's say, a special style to one word of your text. For instance, actually, I'm not sure if there's something that already does this, that's not this span tag. Let's say in a paragraph, you can see that in most books, have like the first letter of a paragraph or for the entire page, that first letter is bigger, like maybe an inch. A span, I could wrap that letter in a span and then target only that letter to make it to size it in whatever way I want. So yeah, spans are also used for like icons that you want to put on your page. It's to wrap a piece of content that small that you want to be able to control in very flexible ways. Also, you could always ask Google. Span tag. What does this span tag do? Yeah, there are some articles that you can explore. Any others? They are welcome. Am I forgetting anything here? Yeah, make sure read this last part one more time. The box content model, the box model, and after that, then we can just get started in the. Actually, take it. Oh, actually, I forgot something, which is a question you may ask is, can we apply the same style to more than one element? Or, well, in this, the answer to that question in here is yes, we are applying this style, which we only define once, to all these divs, right? So all the divs will get this style. So at that point, we're also styling different elements at the same time, but the question is, like, could you select more than one element? Right? Let's say here, let's do. I want all my p tags to have a color red. I refresh. My p tags have the color red. Right? But what if I want my p tags to have a color red? And also my, what else? Like my LIs. What are some of the options that I have for that? I want my p tags to be red, and I also want my LIs to be red. Yes, you could do a color to select any other element. I'm going to do LI. So this selector will not only select P tags, it will also select LI tags. Now my elements, my LI elements are red as well. So there is a git read, which is CSS selectors. I think we also have a link here at the top on. Yeah, this get through this links. We don't have the one for selectors, but here, these two are really good. This will teach you how to grab more complex ways in which you can grab elements and style elements. Also, for instance, this will be how we can grab an element by a class. You can just say period and then the class name. In this example, like intro, let's say we went, I guess I should talk about the class right here. Class is just like an ID. It's an attribute that you can put in elements so that that somehow those elements have something in common, right? So that you're able to style them all at the same time. IDs should be unique, but classes are meant to be reused and grouping elements that have something in common. Now, on that narrative, let's say in here I'm grabbing the P and the Li elements, and what they have in common is that the color will be red. So what I could do is, instead of grabbing two elements like that, I'm going to give my Li elements a class that is going to be maybe text red, and I'm also going to give the same class to my paragraphs. And then I'm going to style them using the class. Let's look at that. So here, I want this p tag to be class, just another attribute, and I want this to be, let's say, text red. Classes can have any name you want. Remember that you will use them to group stuff together that you want that they will share something in common. So here I'm going to do that. Also, let's look at it here. We have two p tags. Their class is text red. And I picked that name because that's what I want them to have in common. I want them to have text red. So I'm going to go here, and instead of P and Li, I'm just going to do the class. So do you remember how if we did the selector for ID is with a pound sign? But this is not an ID, this is a tag. The only difference is that now we have the dot or the period. So I'm going to do text red. So this is the class that I picked for my elements, and this is what I want to apply to them. Now I go back here, I refresh. Now we can see that those p tags that I chose to have a class of text red are being styled because I'm grabbing them here with this selector that grabs the element by the tag and the color to be red. But I said that I also want the LIs to have gapped. So I'm going to go here and do class text red, and I'm just going to copy this, even the space, paste it here, paste here. So classes are just a way in which you can group elements together, whether because you want to grab them from the DOM or because you want them to have a certain common style. Yes, Peter?
Instead of doing it for every single list item in the paragraph, you can do like any other thing, li and class, colon, text red. Like if you assign a bunch of things the same class at the same time, in the way you assign like the color red to all paragraphs and list items.
You mean if I can have more than one class? So let's say this is also not text red, but also an item. Is that what you mean? Like, can I give multiple classes to an element?
No, I mean, can you go back to the test, the CSS file?
Yeah.
So if you made like a li, I forgot what that thing is called, like a div. If you made one that's li, could you then make a class like text red so they're all assigned?
I think, do you mean grabbing an element by class and also, or like here if I do div?
Like if you replace where it says .textred
Uh-huh.
with li, could you then replace class, like color with class
I'll change this one.
to class, and then the name of the class that you put it in, and then
Oh,
call that class?
I see.
Does that work?
This wouldn't work. Let's see what VS Code says. Text. Right. Let's look at why this doesn't work. One, we get that squiggly line. Once you get squiggly lines, hover over them and the text editor will tell you. It says unknown property class. That means class as a property name is not a CSS property. And note that this is not a CSS property. This is an attribute in the element. So in here, these properties will only be valid CSS properties. So yeah, in that case, we cannot really do this. This is not valid CSS, in other words. No, I will do, if we have text red, color red. So we got everything. Now that I refresh, you can see that because the p tag has a class that is text red, and the LIs have a class that is text red, I get the same stuff that I had color red before, but that I was grabbing in with the p tags and then grabbing in the LIs. Basically, if I do this, I comment out this. I refresh, still the same thing is red. Another way is, instead of grabbing them by the tag name and having to grab more than one, I give the p tags and the LIs a class name that they will share, and then I refresh, and I still see the same content highlighted red. And I think a question that Peter made me think about was, can you have more than one tag or more than one class in here? The answer to that is yes. So you could say, let's say you want to color everything that's class text red. You want to color it red, and maybe another class will be item, because maybe you want all the items to be. So now my li doesn't have only one class, it has two classes, the text red and the item class. Even though they sort of are in the same string as you think about JavaScript, they will be separate. Now I could do, let's say I want all my LIs that are of the class item to have text decoration underlined. See what this gives us. Now, because I gave the LIs another class, an item class, and I use that as my selector, then I can apply a CSS property to whatever matches that selector. In this case, item. Questions, concerns? So this is like, I think like my ultimate goal as an instructor is not to teach you CSS and JavaScript and HTML, but rather to show you the way in which you can learn, which is by exploring. And showing you sort of that text decoration, like there are a bunch of other ways in which you can decorate the text. So what I think about is that you will go out and explore all the other possibilities. And I feel like some of you might have noticed this, and I think this is a quote that I really believe in, that people don't learn anything by being told. And I feel like, well, this is certainly true for me. And I think the best like instructors and teachers that I had were the people who sort of like showed me a road, and then they had me like go down that road, right? I think that's sort of what I want for you to. I just sort of give you a taste of all this stuff, but ultimately, if you want to get good at this, you'll need to go in and explore the rest for yourself. Like, you know, there's just not enough time. Even though we had 12 months, there's just not enough time to cover all the ins and outs of CSS, of HTML, and JavaScript. So, cool. So now you could get started on let's get started on the exit ticket. After that, we'll be working in the lab. The purpose of all the labs is just for you to get your hands dirty playing with this, right? So please do the exit ticket, and after that, get started on the lab. You should see that in your calendars for Sunday. Where are we? Sunday. Here we get the exit ticket at 1 to 1 p.m. And the lab is, let me see, I think I might have to fix the lab. It's not popping up here.